saying they've been thinking about me as they see these trades, things like that. First of all, it means a lot that you are thinking of me when you see the Seattle Seahawks. But second of all, I do have some things that I think and some things that I'd like to say. So let's get into that. But first, I'd like to thank all of my channel members: Box, Float, Josh, Cameron, Kian, Andrew, Peacock, Andreas Anderson, Noble, Bulls, Facts and Rankings, James Sucks, Brandon Zeta, Rainy Easterly, Mr. Sean T. Fitz, Evan Foot, Subtle Vibe, Tristan Hoffman, Rhea, Micah Carter, and Isaiah Robeson. Thank you to all of you for your membership, either continued or new. So let's look at some of the big picture stuff. First of all, given the way last season went, and given what Mike McDonald said as he came into the squad, the impression I got personally was Mike McDonald thought that they were a contending team. Now, overall, my opinion was that the Seahawks were a little bit far from being a Super Bowl contender, but I thought in a weaker NFC West, especially with they shockingly were San Francisco 49ers, the Seahawks could make the playoffs, and the Seahawks nearly did make the playoffs. The Seahawks were 10-7, and they were the first 10-win team in NFL history to miss the playoffs. The first one of all time. So I was a little bit confused as I saw this news coming in, because to me, all of these moves that have just happened are signaling that the Seahawks are entering a rebuild phase. But it seemed like to me, you maybe just need to get a little bit more wide receiver depth. You really need to improve the offensive line and get a little bit of help in the secondary. And I thought that we were a playoff team. But now you have DK Metcalf being traded out, Tyler Locket is being released, Geno Smith is traded, and now all of a sudden the future direction's a little bit unclear. And now my problem is, if you're going into a rebuild mode, you have a lot of great young pieces, especially on defense and offense as well. You have these young pieces that by the time the theoretical rebuild is done, well, now they're going to be on bigger contracts and they're going to be older. And that's always sort of the issue with rebuilds, right? Is that you have players on different timelines. I'm looking at players like Witherspoon, looking at guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba. And by the time you get your rebuild to the point you want to be at in 2, 3, 4 years, those guys are either going to be wanting big money or they're going to be wanting out. And then you're right back to the drawing board again. Which is why I think, especially in the NFL, in other sports I understand rebuilds, but especially in the NFL, I think that, especially with how well you can draft and good talent that you can find it deep in the draft, much as possible and always swing for the fences. Teams like Kansas City have encapsulated that. Teams like the Steelers, where DK Metcalf just went, they encapsulate that. They're always sort of in that playoff mix. And the Steelers have never really had to rebuild. So I look at where the Seahawks are right now, and it feels like this isn't what Mike Macdonald was brought in to do. He wasn't brought in to do a rebuild. He was brought in to compete. And Pete Carroll had gone a little bit long in the tooth. That seemed pretty obvious to anybody that's paying attention. Pete Carroll had, I don't want to say he'd lost the locker room, but the locker room had heard his speeches one too many times, and he wasn't bringing new ideas to the board anymore, so you wanted to shake up the team with Mike Macdonald. Brought in new coordinators as well, all that good stuff. And overall, I was satisfied with what Macdonald did. I thought the team looked better. With him at the helm, I thought that there was a little bit more creativity. There's only really one bad loss all year, just the loss to the Giants. But other than that, the losses were acceptable. The wins were good, and overall, I thought it was a decent season. Again, 10 wins, 7 losses. First time that's never been good enough to get into the playoffs. Now, so let's look at that first deal. DK Metcalf is traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a second round pick. That's the main piece there. I don't think they got a player in that deal. I think it's just a second round pick mainly. Now, DK Metcalf was my favorite player currently on the Seahawks, or I guess not now, but he was my favorite active Seahawk. He's one of my favorite Seahawks of all time. After the end of that Legion of Boom era and the team kind of being in a bit of a gully and not being very fun or very exciting to watch, DK Metcalf was kind of the guy that him being drafted and him joining the team revitalized my love for the Seahawks. I'd kind of really stopped watching much NFL football for quite some time during those lean years for the Seahawks because the team just felt like it didn't have any sense of identity. And I thought that DK brought a bit of that identity, he brought that excitement, he was a big personality, big player. So I will always root for DK, and definitely gives me a reason to watch some more Pittsburgh games next season. So this one does hurt a bit, and there, I've seen the Seattle Seahawks fan base seems pretty divided on whether they love DK or hated DK. A lot of people were frustrated with his temper on the field, and I do admit that he would sometimes, get himself or the team in trouble, put the team in a disadvantageous position because he couldn't stop himself from doing something stupid, and that was something that I thought he was going to grow out of, but then as the seasons went along, it became clear that was just who he was. I also think that he was prone to dropping balls more than he probably should have. He didn't have the best hands, especially for his size. But what he did do is he forced the other team to play him one-on-one. Because of his speed, because of his ability to get down the field, he opened up other players really well in a way that I don't think any wide receiver that we can grab in this draft at the position that we should be drafting them at can do for us. Now, theoretically, Jackson Smith-Njigba is the number one guy, and I don't think that without having that pressure release valve of DK, and without having that pressure release valve of Tyler Locket, that he will perform as well. I don't think if he has to be the number one receiver, being the playmaker, all that other stuff, I think he will struggle taking on a much heavier workload. And with Geno Smith leaving, I'm not that upset about it. In my mind, Geno Smith to Darnold is mostly a lateral move. Darnold is like a little bit less than $10 million cheaper than Geno. He's younger than Geno. Both struggle under pressure, which is not great because I think a massive component of Sam Darnold's success last season was that Minnesota Vikings offensive line, which was amazing. And he's coming to Seattle now where the offensive line is not amazing. I wouldn't be upset if we used every single pick in this draft on offensive linemen. We brought in a free agent addition of Josh Jones, who's an offensive lineman, previously played for the Baltimore Ravens, but really he should be nothing more than a depth piece. If he is starting, we're in big trouble. But at least we're targeting depth there with the cap. But Sam Darnold struggles under pressure just like Geno Smith did. Minnesota did a really good job of keeping the pressure off Sam Darnold. I do not think Seattle will be as successful at that. And we saw in those last 2 games of the season, especially against the Los Angeles Rams, how bad Darnold can look when he is being pressured. And now he gets to play the Los Angeles Rams multiple times this season, so lucky for Sam Darnold, right? But ultimately, looking at the stats, looking at their overall QB rankings, I'm not expecting a massive improvement or a massive decline going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold. I hope that we grab a quarterback, maybe in the 3rd round, 2nd round, something like that, later part of the draft, to sit behind Sam Darnold. I had high hopes last season. Sam Howell developing behind Geno. I was high on Sam Howell after some moments. I thought he looked pretty good in 2 years back at this point. But I think it's sort of obvious at this point that Sam Howell is not an NFL caliber quarterback, and I think any hopes of him developing into one have kind of been dashed a little bit. So get somebody else. Let him sit behind Darnold. But ultimately, this feels like a step back for next season. I don't think we win 10 games next season. I don't think we make the playoffs next season. I think Darnold will struggle. I think that the offense is going to struggle a lot. I think that Jackson Smith and Jigba's numbers are going to be down. Just looking at this, so last season Sam Darnold had Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and DJ Hawkinson as his weapons. This year he has Kenneth Walker III, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jake Bobo, and Noah Fant. Which is, it's a definite downgrade there, pretty much across the board. Although this is one thing that I'm sort of keeping an eye on, is the rumor mill is sort of starting up that Cooper Kupp might be coming to Seattle. Now, because it's being said that Los Angeles is trying to trade him, and then if they're unable to find a trade partner by the 1st of the year, that they're going to be releasing him. Which is crazy to me, because he's a guy who won their wide receiver triple crown like 2 years ago at this point, or was it 3 years ago at this point? But he's won all the awards, all the individual success, team success you could want. And not only does Los Angeles not want to resign him, they can't find anybody to trade for him. And I know he's a bit older at this point. He has injury histories. He's not the player he used to be. Especially on separation, he's not as good as he used to be. But I feel like he still had a few big moments last year, and I do think bringing in a veteran wide receiver like Cooper Kupp could probably be good, especially for Darnold. Take some of the pressure off Jackson Smith and Jigba a little bit. I don't know. I've seen a few rumors about Kupp to Seattle. I wouldn't really be opposed to that. One thing I will say though is originally there's a lot of reporting that Seattle was looking at bringing in Aaron Rodgers. And if you guys have watched my NFL related content, anything like that, for any considerable amount of time, you will know that I am not a fan of Aaron Rodgers, and that's putting it politely, that's putting it mildly. And as soon as I saw that reporting, I was like, man, Like, if we had signed Aaron Rodgers, I was not watching any San Jose Seahawks games until he was gone, especially because I didn't even understand the football reasons for bringing him in, because he looked absolutely terrible last season. He did not, he's a husk of his former self at this point. So at the very least, it's Darnold and not Rodgers. I was never the biggest Geno fan, but I sort of came around to him a little bit. He was serviceable. I'd say he was right around average, or not a little bit above average. The Locket one does hurt just because he's such a tenured force on this team. Tyler Lockett's such an interesting and unique wide receiver. The way he goes down, the way that he plays the game so safe. That veteran guy who's been on the team forever at this point. One of the last remaining holdouts still on the team from that championship winning season. I'm pretty sure he was on that team, wasn't he? I'm like 99% sure he was on that team. Let's see. No, he wasn't. Oh, 2015. So he like just missed it. Okay. But he's been on that team for a decade at this point. I'm pretty sure he's the longest tenured player on the team at the very least, but he's been such a mainstay and such a unique wide receiver, such a consistently good wide receiver, and I think underrated by the rest of the league to a certain extent. That one is sad to see him go. Obviously he isn't the player he used to be at this point, but being released in that manner will be interesting. I think, my personal opinion, he's going to end up in Las Vegas along with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll. That could be an interesting reunion there, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But overall, like I said, just my overall opinion is just one of slight confusion. I didn't think we were that far away from being a playoff team. I thought we were pretty far away from being a Super Bowl team. I don't want to say I thought that the Seahawks were near being a Super Bowl team, but I thought you could get into the wild card, maybe win the wild card, something like that. I thought that they're definitely a playoff team. And my impression of Mike McDonald coming in was that he wanted to take the team, turned it into a playoff team. But now he's going and doing a rebuild here. And I question if McDonald will be around long term if he's already doing this. If this rebuild doesn't start to show some results fairly soon, then you have to question if maybe he'll be out the door sooner than later as well. I'm not sure, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for the time being. I'll let them make the mistakes before I say they've made mistakes. But it feels like the Seahawks are definitely taking a step backwards going into next season. I don't expect 10 wins. I don't even expect to be 500. I think this team will probably be below 500. I think this draft need to go all in on offensive line. Maybe find a depth receiver at some point. Maybe you don't even grab that QB. Maybe you grab the QB in the next draft. Because I think Sam Darnold's contract, he only has the 2 fully guaranteed years, so you let Darnold play out this season, draft a QB, next draft, not this draft, let him sit behind Darnold for a year, and then you let Darnold go off, let his contract run out there, and then you have the new, now in his second year, QB step in, and hopefully at that point you're ready to compete and go for a Super Bowl. But those are my overall opinions on the move. Sort of a little bit of confusion overall, I would say. Cautious optimism for the future, but if there are not promising signs or it's not looking like we're heading in the right direction, then I'll be quick to and say it's not working. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you again for everybody who was thinking of me as they saw this news come out. I wasn't going to do this video originally, but I've been receiving so many comments across all my videos about this that I just wanted to make this here and talk about it. But if you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this every single week.